Stocks, especially U.S. stocks, are, I think, overvalued. So no, I would not just take the money I saved by renting and just buying overpriced stocks as opposed to overpriced real estate. So I think you have to be a lot more selective in the names that you invest in. And if you can't do your own homework, then hire somebody who can do it for you, like me or my company, Euro Pacific Asset Management. I mean, we find a lot of the values outside the U.S., the compelling stocks that we could buy at attractive prices, get good yields. But I also think that there's a major dollar decline coming, a potential dollar crisis. And so I want to be invested abroad. I want to be invested in countries that I think will have currencies that will rise in relation to the dollar. And I want to invest in companies that can thrive in an environment where the U.S. consumer is broke and no longer buying stuff. You really have a very cozy, unhealthy relationship between the Fed, the government, and Wall Street. It's just one big club, revolving door of personnel. And the Fed, through its policy, has really engendered to build an asset-based economic model where the wealth effect is very important to driving consumption, confidence. And so the Fed feels that they need to keep the stock market up because if the stock market crashes, everybody's poorer who owns stocks, so they spend less. Now we're in a recession. People lose their jobs. So the Fed kind of thinks, well, what's good for Wall Street is good for the economy. And of course, that works great for Wall Street, again, it's the same economists that work at the government work for Wall Street. They go back and forth, right? They're the same people. They're all buddies. And of course, some of the biggest donors are, Wall Street bankers. You look at the people who write the big checks, not only just directly to the campaigns, because those are not the big checks, it's the PACs, right? So the people that are writing the, $50,000, $100,000 plus checks to the PACs that are working to reelect particular, people, they are disproportionately on Wall Street. That's not a coincidence. It's not that these guys are just so patriotic that they really feel that it's important to donate to the candidate who's going to do good for the country. No, they're making an investment in those candidates, just like anything else. And they're evaluating it based on a cost benefit. Like, how much is it going to cost me to buy this senator or this congressman? And what's my return on my investment going to be? Because I'm not doing it out of the goodness of my heart because I'm a patriotic American. No, it's because I want the politician in office that's going to do things that make me money. I'm not fighting the Fed. The Fed's going to keep creating inflation. So I want to own assets that will benefit from what the Fed is doing. I'm betting that the Fed is going to continue to behave as recklessly in the future as it has in the past, that it's never going to learn from its mistakes and it's going to keep repeating them. And it's going to repeat them until it basically destroys the dollar, sends the price of gold to the moon. And so that's what I'm investing for. I'm investing for the end game because I know how the game is going to end. Most people who are playing it don't even realize the game that they're playing. They don't get the rules. They've just been winning for so long. They think they know how the game ends or how the game is played. They don't, right? It's like a game of musical chairs, but they don't know the music's going to stop one day. They just think it's going to keep on playing, but it's going to surprise them when it stops and, they're not in a chair. They are playing the game by buying the momentum, buying whatever the crowd is buying whatever is going up. And it doesn't matter what the fundamental value of the underlying business is. I mean, in some cases, it doesn't matter if the underlying businesses have any fundamental value at all, or do they even care? All that matters is what's the price and where is it going and how many people are buying it. Look, the price of anything can go up if people keep buying it. It's just that when they stop buying it, that you have a problem. Look at cryptocurrencies, right? They have zero fundamental value. So they're probably the most speculative investment, not probably are the most speculative investment, yet people have more profit in Bitcoin if they have been in it from the early days than in anything else. But all these things are going to ultimately collapse when inflation rears its head in a way that people realize it's here to stay and recognize that the Fed is all talk and no bite. Bark or no bite when it comes to being able to contain inflation, being able to bring it anywhere near 2%, let alone back down to 2%. Although we'd be better off with inflation below 2%. I mean, 2% is not some holy grail that we need to shoot for, and that inflation is at 1%, that's somehow a problem that the Fed needs to solve. I mean, the only problem with 1% is that it's not zero. I'd rather have no inflation than 1%. And in fact, I'd rather have minus 1% than prices staying the same. Everybody wants lower prices. The lower, the better. The less stuff costs, the more stuff I could buy. Even the businesses want to be able to lower prices, because if they can lower their prices, they'll sell more stuff. And so how do businesses try to lower prices? They try to lower their costs. And what a businessman cares about is the margin. As long as I can sell above my cost, I'm making money. And then I can make even more money if I can ramp up the volume. What real experience will tell you is when it comes to consumer goods, an investment is a different situation. If you're thinking about buying an asset as an investment and you think the price is too high, well, you're going to wait for it to come down, right? But when you're talking about consumer goods, which is, what all this is about, people don't wait. If you're hungry, you buy food. You don't say, well, if I starve myself, I can get the food cheaper next week. If you need clothing, you go out and buy it. If you need a new cell phone, you buy it. You know that if you just wait another year, you'll be able to get that phone for less, but you don't want to wait. You want to use the phone right now. Maybe you need the phone, or you're just tired of the phone you have. You want to get a new phone. You may not even be alive next year, right? So who knows? You get hit by a bus, right? Waiting for the price of a phone. And we know that doesn't happen, right? Computers, TVs, they get cheaper almost every year, even now, but people still buy them. The first cell phone, you guys don't even remember the 1980s with the Gordon Gecko cell phone, which is like a huge brick. Hardly anybody bought those phones when they came out. And it's not because people didn't want them. Everybody wanted one. They were just so expensive, few people could afford them. The reason that everybody has cell phones now is because they're a lot cheaper. The first television sets that came out in the 1940s, they were huge. They were a big piece of furniture with a tiny, like a 2-inch screen. And you could only watch them for maybe 2 or 3 hours a day. And it was in black and white. And, it was a horrible picture. They cost as much as a car. Who bought them? Really rich people that wanted to show off that they had a TV. Now, the middle class, sure, they would like one, but they couldn't afford it. And so when prices go down, then people buy. So people don't wait indefinitely for prices to go down, because there is a present value to having something today versus having it a year from now, 2 years from now. And so the economists that believe this nonsense are forgetting about attributing a value to having something now. So even if I know the price is going to go down, I can buy it today for $100. I can buy it a year from now for $95. Am I going to pay $5 to have it today and get to use it for the next year rather than waiting a year? There is a threat right now. The status is in jeopardy and it's going to be lost. And you can see that in the record high price of gold. Central banks are major buyers of gold. Where are they getting the money to buy their gold? They're selling dollars. Why do they want the gold? Because they want to get rid of the dollars. They don't want them. They're reducing their dependency on the dollar. And not only did they have an economic incentive to get rid of the dollar, because the dollar is going to gradually, and then rapidly depreciate because of the enormity of our deficits and the money that we have to print to monetize it. But we created an added incentive, Biden did, with sanctions that were put on Russia because we didn't like what Russia did. Russia invaded the Ukraine, and we said, we don't like that. And therefore, we're going to take your dollars. We're going to kick you out of the global SWIFT system. We're going to confiscate, your treasuries. And, right or wrong, whether you agree with Putin or disagree with Putin, right? That's immaterial. Doesn't matter. All that matters is we told the world, America decides whether you get to keep your dollars, whether you get to keep your treasuries. And we have to approve of your conduct. And if we don't like what you're doing, it may not have to be a war. It could be anything. This is the precedent. We're gonna take your dollars away from you. Well, who the hell wants to be in that position? Especially a country like China, who's our biggest creditor, who's got trillions worth of our treasuries. How much anti-China rhetoric is there in the U.S.? Look at all the tariffs that they just imposed today on Americans who want to buy Chinese products, right? China is vilified all the time in the media by U.S. politicians. If I was China, I wouldn't want any U.S. dollars. I wouldn't want any treasuries. It's only a matter of time before we sanction them and freeze their assets.
How much of that is justified with China?
None of it. I don't think any of it is justified. Our problems are homemade. They're not made in China. Just about everything else is, but not our problems. Our economic problems, our inflation problem, that's here. Washington is the enemy, not Beijing. We need to, rebuild the industrial nation that has been destroyed over the years by taxes and regulations. We need to rebuild savings. Americans have to stop living beyond their means. They have to stop buying stuff they can't afford. They have to save their money. delay gratification. People have to work, productively, not just in the service sector, but we have to produce, and asset prices have to come down. People are going to have to lose money. Interest rates have to go up even more than they have. This is going to be very disruptive for a lot of people. And a lot of people are going to have to be told that they're not going to be able to retire, that, their retirement savings are inadequate, that Social Security, Medicare are broke, and you can't, you're not going to get what was promised to you because government has to cut a lot of spending. And, the politicians don't want to tell the voters that because the voters don't want to hear that and they're not going to vote for them. But that doesn't mean that the voters are going to get all the benefits that they have been promised. They're not going to get them. They may receive the money, but the money is not going to buy very much. And that's really what counts. It doesn't matter that I get a Social Security check. What matters is, can I buy food, right, with my Social Security check? And the answer is no. Right? Then what difference does it make? And it's interesting because even my father pointed this out in his book, The Biggest Con. And this is back from the 1970s. He had published an excerpt from the Congressional Record. And this was William Proxmire who said this, who was the chairman of the Senate Committee on Money and Banking. And they were talking back then about Social Security and what to do. And, they ultimately raised taxes and stuff like that. But they talked about, the precarious situation of the program back then. Proxmire said, look, at the end of the day, Social Security obligations will be paid. America, we have a printing press, and we're going to use that printing press to pay these benefits. The benefits may be worthless when the recipients receive them, but they are going to be paid. And so this is a high-powered senator admitting that Social Security benefits may be worthless, but people are going to get them. And that's a big statement. And if Social Security benefits are worthless, then the dollar is worthless because that's what Social Security payments are. So Proxmire was saying all of our money may be worthless, but we're going to keep on printing it. We're going to keep all of our commitments. What I think is much better is for the government to acknowledge that it's overpromised and can't deliver and make cuts to government spending, including restructuring that $35 trillion national debt that's growing exponentially, coming clean with our creditors that we can't pay, and defaulting, and offering to pay less than 100 cents on the dollar. This is what we have to do. If we don't do that and we just print money instead so that we can pay everybody in full, the losses are going to be much greater. The real losses that result from inflation will dwarf the losses that would have resulted from default. I think that if we had a freer market than the one we have today, with fewer regulations and therefore more opportunity, fewer people would be poor, right? So to a degree, the government is the reason that more people find themselves in a state of poverty than would otherwise be the case if the government stayed out and we had more freedom, which means we'd have more opportunity. Those who make it, either they're just naturally born, with more intelligence, or they just have more drive, more ambition. They're willing to work harder. So to the extent that most people succeed, it's because of their own hard work. Now, of course, some people get lucky. Some people are born to wealthy parents and they inherit a lot of money and they do nothing to earn it, right? So that's life, right? Life isn't fair. Some people, get dealt a good hand and other people get dealt a lousy hand. But there are people who are dealt a lousy hand that win, that make the most out of that hand, and that end up being very wealthy. And there are people that get a great hand and they end up losing. They squander their money. Am I trying to say, should I blame people? I mean, I'd have to look at their individual choices and their circumstances. I mean, did they just really get a bunch of bad breaks? What did they do? How did they find themselves in their circumstances? Look at, the choices that they made, how they ran their lives. Some people could have just gotten unlucky and they just happened to be the victim of a string of unfortunate events. People are by and large responsible. Even if the government makes it harder to succeed, they don't make it impossible.
And what do you think we should do about the people that do just want to be lazy? They want to eat, sleep, play video games, work the bare minimum and exist in their life.
They need to figure out how to exist that way without compelling somebody else at gunpoint to take care of their needs. So look, if you don't want to work, if you just want to lie around and play video games, then you figure out how to afford to do that. Where you figure out where you're going to get your food, because nobody owes you any of those things, right? You're on this world, and the rest of the people that are here don't have a duty to feed you, clothe you, house you, You have to figure out how to do all those things. Now, if it's more important to you to just lie at home and play video games, well, then that's your priority. So maybe you stay and live with your parents and convince them to pay your bills, right? But don't, expect other people, right, to pay your bills for you. And of course, if you created a world where everybody can just choose to do nothing and play video games, well, what if everybody makes that choice? Well, how is the world going to survive? Where's the food going to come from if nobody wants to be a farmer? Because the farmers just want to play video games. In fact, where are the video games going to come from if nobody is going to work to produce them? If everybody just wants to sit back and play them because they assume somebody else is going to do it for them. So look, we just have to get rid of all of the government interference and subsidies, and then people will make whatever choices they're able to make in their circumstances. In America, because, America was founded on certain principles, but we have government to secure our liberties: life, liberty, property, the pursuit of happiness. Government is there to protect me and to prevent people from taking the things that I own and the things that I earned. Government is not there to steal from me. It's not there to take things away from me, but to secure my freedom and to secure my liberty. Government is not there to give me things. So I have freedom, right, of speech, but the government doesn't have an obligation to provide me with a microphone and a platform or an audience, right? I can pursue happiness if I want to go out and get an education. That's my right, but the government doesn't have to provide me with one. The government doesn't have to give me a school, give me a teacher, right? I don't have a right to those things. I have a right to seek out an education on my own. The government can't stop me from doing that, but they don't owe that to me, right? I can't force my neighbor to pay for that. I have a right to eat. I don't have a right to food. If I'm hungry, I can't steal your food. I can't elect a politician to steal it from you. I have a right to go out and, grow my own food or try to trade with farmers who grow food, do some work or trade something else. Or I can even go to somebody and ask for free food because I'm hungry and maybe they'll give it to me. But I can't take it from somebody else. I can't take what doesn't belong to me. And I can't vote for a politician to steal in my behalf, right? Theft is wrong no matter who does the stealing. No matter how many people vote for the thief, theft is still wrong, right? You don't change the nature of that relationship. Now, we have decided, I think, in American society that collectively there are certain things that we're going to pay for through taxes. Police, on the federal level, it would be a military to protect all of us from foreign invasion, right? We want to have a government, we want to have, embassies, and we want to have certain things that the federal government legitimately does. Well, then, collectively we're going to pay for them. That is not theft because the money is being used to benefit everybody equally, including the people who are taxed. Whereas the way it works now is the government takes money from one person and just gives it to somebody else. Right? It's not used for the benefit of the nation, for the collective well-being, for the general welfare, right? Like it says in the Constitution, but it's for the specific welfare of the individual who gets the money. And it's taken from an individual who derives no benefit from that. Personally, I don't think there should be an income tax at all, so the tax rate should be zero. I don't think there should be a payroll tax, so that tax should be zero. I think the government should fund itself on indirect taxes, which is how the government funded itself until 1913. It was predominantly tariffs, and so they're fine, or you can have taxes on certain goods, taxes on alcohol, tobacco. We have those taxes now. Taxes on gasoline. There are federal taxes that we have. That used to be it. That used to cover everything. The only reason we have an income tax is because we have all these welfare programs, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all these other government involvement, getting government in education and all this stuff that it shouldn't even be involved in.